Hello and welcome to Property Matters, 40 minutes of lively chat and debate around all matters property and designed to be of interest to people who have an interest in property. Property Matters is supported by Fairview International and also by Town & Country Property Auctions London Limited. Property world never far from the news, and we've got plenty to discuss as always. We'd love to get your thoughts and comments on our debate today, either underneath the video, and the questions will come through to us here as if by magic and appear on the screen, or of course you can get in touch with us via email in the traditional old-fashioned way, propertymatterstv@gmail.com. Delighted to say we have joining us once again our resident property expert Joe Joshi, and also this week our special guest KAM KALRA, who is a lettings specialist at ELLIS CO in Harrow and Stanmore. Gentlemen, good morning.
Morning, gentlemen. Morning. Nice to welcome you on this nice, slightly brighter day. I think we've had enough showers to last for a while. Amazing how many roads are completely blocked, and there seems to be just nowhere for the water to go. But I guess the car does need a wash occasionally, albeit a bit muddy.
Morning to you, Cam, as well. If I start with just asking you to give us a little bit about what you do with ELLIS CO.
Very good morning to both of you, and thank you once again for giving me the opportunity to come back on the show once again. I represent ELLIS CO Harrow, Wembley Park and Stanmore branches, and I deal in the letting side of the industry. Whenever we talk about properties, lettings is something that plays a very crucial role in the property industry itself, and it is quite important in this day and age, in this market, to ensure that the legislations are being kept as a priority, and landlords and the agent are aware of most of the legislation changes, what has been happening due to the pandemic, and being a main source of income for most of the landlords, looking after a rental property becomes even more crucial during pandemic times.
Because you're, I wouldn't say plagued, but you're certainly not short of any legislation around lettings.
Yes, I mean, rental industry has seen a massive change since the beginning of pandemic, I would say since the March 2020. And since then, we have just never had a chance to even look back and understand what all changes we have gone through, really. The biggest challenge that most of the landlords have faced is the tenants are not able to keep up with the rental payment, which is one of the major questions and setback in the lettings industry, which has happened recently. Thankfully, just last week, there is a new rental insurance product that has been launched in the market. I'm not sure if most of you are aware that a general rental insurance product would only cover 6 months of unpaid rent. But with the launch of this new product last week, 15 months of unpaid rent is covered now, which has never happened before in the property industry. The product was launched by one of the reputed insurers, which we can go through later on as and when required during the process. But this is such an important change in the property industry and gives a massive boost in confidence in the rental market back again, to find a tenancy and a tenant for a property. Most of the landlords are getting very they have been taken aback with the fact that what happens if my tenants don't pay the rent? What will happen to my property? Will it get repossessed? And to put their mind to rest, it is quite important for most of the landlords to understand now that the lettings industry is also working very hard to try and secure landlords' interest, being one of the most stable source of income for the landlords.
Question to both of you, really. Do you think the government's got it about right in support? Because, you know, obviously they wanted to protect tenants during the tough times of the pandemic. And so they did have a moratorium on anyone, you know, being ousted out of their property, so to speak. But of course, by the same token, that's given some people, perhaps at the with the wrong intentions, the ability to play on the landlord's patience. Let's put it like that.
Yeah, I think I mean all these changes that are constantly coming in, Paul, and I'm sure Cam will be able to endorse that. That constantly the opportunities that are being presented for both tenants and landlords are get tighter and tighter, and they're shrinking all the time, and makes their life that much harder. However, from my point of view, not being the lettings expert in this, which is Cam's domain, but property investment as buy to let was just not going to go away. They try to make as many bridges and as many hills as they can for it, but it's still one of the strongest forms of investment and the strongest forms of comfort. I just put it down to the old adage of touching, feeling, and seeing. Sometimes, even if it's lying empty and doing nothing, you can put your key through the front door, stand inside, and say, "Well, actually, this is something that is mine. We might need a coat of paint for me to get it rented or do something else with it." But there are it's not something that's going to go away in a hurry. And of course, as much legislation can come into it, and the more legislation you have into this thing, the more opportunities these both protection for tenants and landlords come in.
And Cam, how has the pandemic affected the way that you do business? Because the property industry in general has been open for business ever since June of last year. So you've been acting like as if nothing had happened in terms of going to work every day and dealing with clients.
Absolutely. Thankfully, the property industry has been open since June last year, and it has been a big challenge for people and agents like us to try and work out in this kind of situation and play in a way which is comfortable for landlords, tenants from lettings point of view. The viewings have been affected. Number of people, applicants who are getting registered have been affected. If we have to arrange a viewing for property, again, people who are living in the property, they are a bit worried as to how it's going to affect a third party coming into their property, what precautions as agents we need to take to ensure that the person we are visiting to in their property, we keep their interests safe, what precautions we are going to take with the applicant we are taking along with us, how we can protect their interest. At the end of the day, as Joe rightly highlighted, lettings still remain the strongest investment even today. But saying that, it is quite important and crucial for us to ensure that the safety is paramount in today's world, which is what we all have to understand, how best we can package ourselves, whereby the investment is secured for the landlord while we keep safety as paramount for all parties concerned, including the viewers who are going to view the property, the actual person living in the property who is kindly allowing us to enter his property with a third party, what all steps we should take to make sure that these things are taken care of in the best possible way.
Okay, well, we'll return to lettings in just a moment, but we wouldn't have a Property Matters show if it wasn't for the weekly discussion around stamp duty. And we were talking last week about will the Chancellor, won't he extend, and the fact that they'd somehow managed to silence the debate about it in the Commons. But they have conceded this week, and they will be debating the stamp duty extension or potential extension tomorrow, Monday, at 4:30 on the 1st of February. So this has got to be good news, Joe, I would imagine.
the size of property, the price of property is going up, and income is going down. This balance has to come at some point, at somewhere, for people to justify spending their money for the right size of property. At this stage, it's not very easy for a person who has a low income to think of a property in a decent or a central location as it is, because of the ever so increasing prices.
We've had a number of questions.
Sorry.
I understand that we've had a problem with sound for a little while, so I think we've resolved the problem now. So apologies to those that were unable to hear the sound. But we have had a comment here from Wal, who has said, good morning. How is the market reacting to these times? Are properties going up or down? Is it a buyer's or seller's market, or has it stabilised? Good to see you all. So, Joe, is it a buyer's or seller's market at the moment?
Well, it depends where you're going to be buying, to be perfectly honest with you, at this moment in time. If you're buying in London, then I would say it's pretty much a buyer's market there, because the normal person that is looking to buy in London is an international buyer, and that has been slightly stopped because the pandemic and the people allowing to come in and quarantine for 14 days and all that sort of stuff has held that part back. So there's a correction perhaps in London, which gives an opportunity for buyers to perhaps try and do a better deal. The people that have been in London and the cities have been moving out and thinking about their future as to where they're going to be. And so therefore, perhaps there it may be a seller's market, and that subsequently sort of qualifies with the increase in the value, or the increase in prices and the market that we talk about between 4 and 6% across the board. So it's my answer to that really is about where you're looking to buy. If you're looking to buy a little bit out in the countryside, you might not think and you might not get the deal that you thought you were going to get. But if you're looking to buy in London, so anyone that's an international buyer, now is the time for you to be buying in London, for example, or any of the main cities. Because what the pandemic has done is actually made people think about how we live in the UK and where we now want to go and how that's going to affect our lives. And therefore, the inner cities may be only of interest to people that may come into the country. And traditionally, London has always been attracted by and attractive to international buyers for a number of reasons. And those reasons are security. For example, London and the UK is undoubtedly the most safest and securest place that there exists. Of course, our beloved NHS is very, very important. So those that come in, maybe not in the future, but certainly have in previous times benefited from the NHS. And of course, there's always mixed reviews about that. But the long and the short of it is available to all. And that is an important thing. Of course, in terms of banking and facilities. So literally, when there is a crisis everywhere else in the world, one of the places that they all seem to run to is London. I always say, if you go to Calais, there is a bigger queue to come to London, but there isn't as big a queue in Dover to go to Calais. So that tells you that there is always going to be a demand over here. And we're constantly fighting the waters to make sure that they don't slip in through some shape or form. But the reality is that we are an attractive place for all to come to.
Just to recap, and I'm keen to get the response of the people viewing today, but we were talking about the stamp duty holiday, which is going to be debated, or the extension of it is going to be debated tomorrow at 4:30 in the Commons. The options seem to be extend it for a month to let all of the 2020 transactions go through, or to extend it for 6 months, or even abolish it altogether. So it'd be interesting in the comments if we have anybody viewing to get what they would do if they were chancellor. It'd be interesting to pull that up. So that was what we were talking about while the microphones were off. Apologies about that, but I think we're all back and running now. I know we're back and running now fine. So moving on, and this is something that you might want to comment on, Cam. Less than a third of agents saw rents rise in December. We understand that rents rose year on year by about 8%, which, from a landlord's perspective, I suppose is pretty good. But how are you finding the market out there at the moment? Is it tough for landlords trying to get the best return?
Yes, absolutely. This has been a very interesting question throughout the pandemic times about how strong the rental market is. With the loss of income, obviously rental market heavily depends on the income criteria of an individual. If a person is earning decent amount of money, then of course they would not mind spending certain percentage of their income on the rental side of things. But if the income has been affected in general overall, then rental has to be in tandem with the income at some point, which kind of works out in the general maths. So to answer your question, yes, the rental has not gone up or has been stable for some time. Whether we talk about commercial or residential, both the rental has been very, very stable for almost over a year now. At this moment in time, as agent, I would strongly advise landlords from my experience that instead of looking for a rent increase, it's important for them to understand what and how strong their tenants are in carrying on with the current rental. So open up a dialogue with their tenants to understand how much they are struggling with their current income. Are they okay to pay what they are paying currently? And instead of proposing a £25 increase, maybe it's better to delay this increase for another 6 months to a year's time and see how things are going. The government is giving us subsidies, and probably there is no harm for landlords here to understand a bit more of tenants' issues, to see what they can do for the tenants. No point in forcing the tenants to go for a £25 or a £50 increase if as it is they are already struggling to pay whatever they are paying now. Rent increase will happen eventually, whether we're talking today, tomorrow, or in 6 months' time. That's not the question. The question is how we can all join hands together and go through this difficult problem so the tenants are comfortable paying what they are paying. The landlords are not struggling to pay their mortgage. The landlords don't have to worry about losing their property just because they have to keep up with their mortgage. So it has to be kind of a balance between the landlords outgoing and tenants paying the rental what they are currently paying. This is what my suggestion would be to both the parties.
I mean, it's a fairly resilient market, the rental market, but landlords, the fact of the matter is that landlords have been taxed and squeezed for quite some time now, and certainly there aren't the gains in there that there used to be.
Yes, the taxation part has changed for the last few years as far rental market is concerned. But whichever way we talk about, as Joe rightly highlighted, rental industry still seems to be quite strong investment for the landlord, and it's still a very stable source of income for the landlord, even though looking after the taxes, increase in taxes over the last 3 to 5 years, the amount of rental as compared to the outgoing for the landlord, the balance in between, whatever the income generated in between for the landlord should be decent enough at this point of time, in my opinion. If a landlord is proposing any sort of increase at this stage, it becomes very complicated subject for the tenants to understand how they can cope up with this increase. And again, it's also important for the landlord to know that getting tenants out, that's completely another subject to discuss, I suppose. Eviction is also very, very difficult these days, and getting tenants out of the property on the basis of rental arrears has become even more challenging, and definitely is taking much more longer.
Had some feedback on the stamp duty. We've got Wall here saying, I benefited from it being suspended in October. If we're to keep the market buoyant, they should do all they can to help it out. Go for another 6 months is his view. And Sunny's been on as well, and he says, abolish the stamp duty holiday. Properties have risen in other countries too, e.g. in Canada, where stamp duty was not reduced. So seems to be a mix of views as far as our stamp duty debate is. But that's really the issue, isn't it, Joe? Because what does the Chancellor do? He's got a number of options, and everyone seems to be in all the different camps.
Yeah, I'm not surprised, and I think he will come out with a result. He has to a large extent, under the current policy of build our way out of all of the things that we are in. I mean, they've done an amazing job supporting the nation in the best possible way. Of course, not everybody's going to be happy. You're never going to make everyone happy, but to a large extent, we've been holding our own. It's an interesting conversation had recently, and of course, a byword existed back again only shortly. And I was just saying that a year ago, prior to the year, for 4 years, there was an amazing byword that was in every conversation, and that byword was Brexit. And it's interesting in terms of memories that in the last year, the new word is lockdown and pandemic. And vaccine and virus, and the question you ask yourself is how quickly that will change, perhaps in the 18 to 2 years time going forward. But the thing is, we're a forgiving nation to a large extent, and in the right way, if the Chancellor can do the right thing, he will be seen for the right way. But if he isn't doing the right thing, we've been here before, it's not going to change the views of the people that live in the United Kingdom and want to continue to come here and invest here, because it is literally as safe as houses. A bricks and mortar is what people want to invest in and buy. And they'll continue to do that. And they'll do that elsewhere as well, as Sunil has commented. But we're an island here, and I'll continue to say we can go up or we can go down, but we are restricted how far we can stretch out. And it's always about supply and demand. The demand is great and the supply is limited. And that's what's going to continue to drive those safe investments that we have. Whether the Chancellor chooses to do a U-turn, or whether he extends it, or whether he delays it, or whatever it does, it's not going to stop our belief is in the UK in terms of where it's going to go. And I think that's very, very key. I want to pick up on a point that Cam just brought up, and that was about evictions and notices. And in terms of sales, that eviction situation, whilst I totally empathize with the government, because the last thing they want to do is have lots more people out on the streets to handle the problem that they already got, it does cause a massive problem for our landlords, because and people that are in as tenants, not everyone, but some will take full advantage of the circumstances and perhaps not make the payments that they're supposed to make. And that does put a separate pressure. But of course, the problem with that is that it's now 6 months before you can give a notice, and Cam will correct me on that or not. And by the time you've gone through the process, the courts are a couple of years behind. It could cause a huge issue. I know certainly as an auctioneer, the auction situation where we normally will sell investment properties, it makes it difficult for our investors that've got tenants in there to consider evicting them or giving them notice, because they can't actually sell a vacant property, and maybe the rental income is not sufficient to get the return on investment that they want. So there are a lot of underlying issues that are still there. That doesn't still take away, in my mind, the value and the interest that the property market will continue to generate. It has done. I mean, 1980 to now, it's only gone one way. It might have had a step. So if you look at what the statistics are saying recently, since 2015 to now 2021, 2021, 2020 saw an increase. So 5 years, it stayed the same. It didn't have a reverse gear. It didn't go backward. We didn't crash and fall off the edge. We just stayed stable. And in some parts of the country that will continue. And in some parts of the country, there's a buyer's market. In some parts of the country, there's a seller's market, because we are in a unprecedented time, as anybody would say. We don't know which way it's going to go. And that will bring us on to a subject that we'll cover in a short while. But yeah, I think that it's very important to see that investment in property is going to be at the top of the tree, no matter what.
So lettings is very much in the news this week, and that's why we're delighted to have KAM KALRA with us from ELLIS CO Sales and Lettings, based at Harrow and Stanmore. And this week, I say that lettings is in the news because the government has changed the model tenancy agreement, KAM, to make it standard wording that tenants will be able to keep pets as the default, whereas even though we're a nation of animal lovers, KAM, the truth of the matter is only 7% of landlords allow pets.
Absolutely. This has been a massive subject for debate for a very long time as to what is the right course of action for landlords or for tenants. Now, there is no straightforward answer to this question in terms of whether keeping pets or not keeping pets is the answer going forward in tenancy. The model tenancy agreement has been changed, which is very good, but there are a lot of other factors which will come in action at this stage. Is the fact that many people are allergic to pets, and what exactly the course of action should be after the current tenants have moved out of the property and the new tenants are moving in, how the property has to be prepared and made ready for the new tenants to take occupation, especially when the new tenants would be or happens to be allergic to pets. Now, it is a fantastic news for a majority of the people. I'm quite positive about that. Even we are quite excited as agents that we face this question from tenants a lot of times, that what should I do with my beloved pet? I've got a small dog, or I've got a very friendly indoor cat, which unfortunately I'm not able to move into my property. Now that question will be answered straight away, whereby they would be able to keep their friends, keep their pets with them at the property. But the problem doesn't end there. That's okay for that particular person. How the property would need to be prepared towards the end of tenancy for the new tenants to take occupation would be $1 million question at this stage. A lot of other dynamics will come in action. But yes, for the time being, you're absolutely right. Allowing pet to be in the property is certainly a fantastic news for a lot of tenants, and I'm very, very positive it will bring a decent positive change for people, and they will look forward to not depart with their friends, with their pets anymore.
Because some more cynical critics might say that it's just another reason for the landlord to withhold some of the deposit at the end of the tenancy.
The deposit side, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, I think that there's always going to be a landlord look at it. I think you just got this cats and dogs thing has been going on for many years, Paul, and it's caused loads and loads of problems as time has gone on, and of course, where possible, it's taken advantage. The problem is that whilst there is a big nation of pet lovers, there's equally a big nation of landlords that are not pet lovers, because the problem is that, you know, it does leave the property in a difficult position. It's not kept clean. Some pets, you can't control a pet. You think you can always, but they're going to do certain things to that. So it's either the tenant has to repair that before he goes, pay for it, or come from a deposit. But it's also, I think, other things that have got to be considered, and it's probably also part of what we're going to have to be doing going forward in terms of the pandemic. So the two have a correlation, and the correlation is that some sort of cleanliness, over cleanliness, maybe some sort of fumigation, etc., will start to take place. I think there's a potential business for the cleaning companies that will have to come in and literally say that they've cleaned it. I mean, it's a bit like restaurants and hotels and whatever. They put a note there now and put a seal on a door or something and say that this room has been, you know, done in such a way, because people will, not just because of pets, but also just of human beings, will want to know that it's been left, you know, virus free or cat and dog free or flea free or whatever those things might be. That needs to be addressed. And I think there was a subject we covered very briefly last week, and that was about insurance that agents were able to claim back on because they were excluded on it. And one of those things that sort of brought to my attention was that sometimes we end up going to a property and not knowingly where pets have been some sort of fleas have come in. You come back with that damage to your offices or wherever you've gone. So this whole thing has brought everything like that highlighted in our whole being. Apart from masks and gloves, you almost feel you need to go in there with a white suit on and a helmet on, because that's the way it makes you feel. It's not the case, but you are beginning to sort of think that way, because that's how you look. I mean, I went to a property this week and I just all gloved up and masked up, and I thought, blimey, this is not the way we used to do it. No. But now, is that the new norm? I don't know.
What will the new normal be? Cam, you were going to say something a moment ago.
Yeah, about the damage, about your question, what you mentioned, that the landlord would be able to claim more money at the end of tenancy, just because they have a reason to. I think it won't be that easy for landlords to claim any sort of damage unless those damage are actually justified damage, because there is a deposit protection scheme in place, which has been in place for a long time. If I remember correctly, I think it came in action in 2006, 2007, or April 2007, if I remember correctly. Landlords, just because the pets are in the property, and landlords think that they can use this to their advantage of claiming more money towards the end of tenancy, which will not be the case, in my opinion. It is very, very and extremely important for both the landlords and tenants to understand that the damage caused at the end of tenancy has to be justified in terms of monetary value. That, yes, because of pet, this damage has happened in the property, and to rectify that damage, this is the amount that will be charged, and that has to be backed up with the right companies, as Joe kindly highlighted, that it will be a potential business for a lot of cleaning companies and refurbishment companies to understand how a pet damage can be rectified and to what sort of amount it will be charged. I'm very sure there is also a room for insurance companies now to come in, because in rentals, we have always seen that rental insurance has been in place for a long time, but I'm quite positive with this new change in legislation, there will be a room for pet insurance to come in place, which should in general cover, even now there is pet insurance in place, as we all know, but I'm sure that will be a part of tenancy in one way or the other, whereby they should cover up the cleaning side of things, fumigation, as Joe was highlighting, or maybe a pet damage towards the end of tenancy. But to answer your question, that landlords should be able to use to their advantage, I think that will not be that easy for the landlords to use this clause to deduct money at the end of tenancy, just because there is a little damage caused by the pet during the tenancy.
Thank you, Cam. We're running short on time, gentlemen, but I do want to cover this one story, and obviously we want to talk about one particular issue that's dear to Joe's heart as well. Zoopla did issue this week its annual UK house price index, and this is where we got the 4.3% growth that we were talking about earlier on. So that's what Zoopla reckoned that in 2020 the market grew by. But what's interesting is that the third lockdown, it's saying, is exacerbating the supply and demand imbalance. So people are not putting their properties on the market in early 2021. It's down 12%, but demand and the interest in moving is going up by 13%. And if you look at the strength of demand, absorbed a lot of supply. The strength of demand in the second half of the year absorbed a lot of supply, and as a result of that, we start this year with 7% fewer homes than we did a year ago. And whether it's rental or whether it's buying, people are looking to move out of smaller properties into bigger properties. They're looking to trade up for space. Families want gardens. Single bachelors with small one bedrooms are looking for a second bedroom so they can have a home office, and as a result of that, that's putting pressure on prices. So there's a lot there to digest, gentlemen. Fill your boots.
Okay, so I'll fill those boots for you, Paul. As you would expect me to come up with all that sort of stuff anyway.
The solution is all yours, Joe.
so I might as well just get on with that part of it. But yes, it's good to see the ratios, the supply and the demand, which I covered a little bit earlier on anyway, in terms of where we are in terms of the values and what happens for properties. Interesting when you see actually put on paper that the amount of properties that have been absorbed. And when you actually drive around in your town and you see all these new blocks going up, you always ask yourself, I wonder who's going to buy that. I wonder how many people are they expecting to turn up. But the reality is that there's more people turning up than you imagine, and more people that will continue to buy, because the home is where the heart is, as they say. It's what we want. It's where our mindsets are set. And certain new changes, including the new lease changes that have happened, where people can actually have a longer lease and no ground rents and so forth, are all plus points that have now taken for both buyers and investors, as far as they're concerned. The other thing, of course, that is very key in this is the move. And the move is that throughout the pandemic, people have had the time to stop and think and restructure their lives. And like rightly, as Zupla's comments are made, people are looking for gardens. There was a time when families were not looking for gardens, but more kids have been at home. Circumstances have met that all of a sudden, what do? We're restricted to go out, can't go out outside your bubble, can't do this, can't do that, can't have a cup of tea, can't have that. All of a sudden you've got to turn around and say, if you had a garden, you're going to be able to let your children go out in the garden. And of course, the bachelor pad, the pied à terre, needs to be expanded to consider a study area. And these are all going to be the points that are going to be taken into consideration when people move. Now, going back the time when I started, there was a number of other things that were the reason. For example, I was always taught if a man wants a garage, sell him the garage, you give him the house free, because really he wants the garage for his car. And he wasn't interested in that. So now we have to say, if the person wants the garden, give him the garden and sell him that garden and give him the house free. Because really the driving factor for that person's decision is that particular point, and be it a garden, be it a garage, be it the extra room, be it the area becomes an issue. And that leads me on to my little pet subject that we're going to actually be talking about in terms of what is going to reflect the values of future homes in my mind, and that is going to be broadband. Now I'll say that again, that is going to be broadband. And the reason I say that is that recently I've had interesting conversations with the people that have sort of said, what broadband do you use? And I said, why is that? What's the question? Well, the one that we have at home, all of a sudden I got 3 kids, all on schooling, home learning, all on their laptop and computer. The wife's in the kitchen because she's working from home, and I'm actually in the garden shed because I've been kicked out, and so our broadband isn't actually coping with the upload of all the information that everybody's having to do. And going forward, people are going to actually say, is the broadband in this particular location? So this is a great punt for the broadband people, by the way. Get your game up. You need to sort yourselves out, because the broadband is going to be the big issue going forward. Now, if those people are moving out from the towns like London and want to live in the countryside, and they got no cables, or what do they call it, fiber optics, that's the new word, isn't it? It's all got to be fancy stuff, lots of gigabytes, whatever they get. The point is, they're not getting it. And if they're not getting it, the value and the location of that place, be it rental, be it for sale, be it for anything, is going to be started to be affected. So landlords, in KAM's case, will need to start to think about upping their game of the type of investment they make, where they make it, and also what kind of broadband. Agents will probably have to start putting on their details, the level of broadband that is available in there. Now that's actually stirred up another subject altogether, and that is, how do we get it there? Now, it's cabling. So I had a discussion recently that, how does do I have that in my area? And the problem is, when you're in the remotest of areas, it's a huge issue. You got to dig up the road, you got to get over someone's land, you got to go under someone's tunnel. I don't know what you got to do to get there. But the problem is, every one of those people in that piece of jigsaw is going to have an issue of, you can't get past my land without paying me for something or giving me something in return, because this is my land and you can't have it. But all of these people have got to come to a point. So there's a government review going on right now about how they're going to get through providing boxes and satellites and all that other stuff that they're going to do from G4 to G5 as far as broadband is concerned. So broadband is going to be one of the key factors. It used to be, am I in a school catchment area? Am I close to a train station or an underground station? Am I close to a motorway? Do I get, are other shops nearby? All of those things. And in that little tick box is going to be, can I have the appropriate Wi-Fi in my house or wherever I'm living? Because I'm going to have to work from home. And if I can't have it, I can't actually live there. I can't move there. Will I pay more rent to have that facility? Yes, it may be that rent is reflected in whatever the company might be paying. Because don't forget, a lot of companies have now started to tell their employees that they can work from home. And they're actually reducing their overheads by getting rid of their big offices, because they now realize they don't need it. So there's a huge cycle going on. And in that cycle are new additions of things that we want, the shopping list. So I think my message today is about, all the things that you need to consider in your sale and also in your investment. So when you're buying to rent or buying to live in, these are some of the things that you've got to consider. But as a seller, because at the end of the day, that's what is important, the sellers have got to consider the things that they now need to meet in order to get the best value, best return for the sale of their property going forward.
And Cam, is this something that you see increasingly in the lettings market? I mean, are you seeing people asking for broadband facilities, or is that actually not just the responsibility of the tenant?
This has popped up quite sort of recently, as Joe rightly highlighted, that dynamics are changing, a lot of things are changing, and landlords would have to cater for a lot of other things which we never used to think in the past. A lot of applicants, a lot of tenants are coming into us asking for an office room in the property before the rent. Previously, it used to be a 2-bedroom flat or a 3-bedroom house. Now it's the questions are in lines of a 2-bedroom flat with an office room or a 3-bedroom house with an office room. And yes, landlords would have to start thinking in those lines as to how attractive they can make their property for their property to be picked up in the market when there are other properties available for rental purposes. And Joe rightly highlighted, it comes down to the fact that would the tenant pay more for these kind of facilities provided with the current market, whichever we are going through at the moment. Broadband, internet facilities, office room, these things are becoming part of our daily life now. Work from home is no more luxury anymore for people. It's sort of come down to every more or less every person, every professional has worked from home these days. And requirement for a small space and internet and a strong broadband facility is becoming ever so important now, that if these facilities are catered for in the property, in my opinion, a tenant would not mind paying that little bit extra to have a peace of mind.
Surely the system has to change, because, for example, if I take my own mother's house, I mean, my mother is 86, she lives in a street, the companies have said there's no way we're going to put any fibre into this road because there isn't enough demand within the road. Most of the people living in the road, surprise, surprise, are elderly. They're quite happy with a very, very moderate speed of broadband. So surely if the road is uneconomic, then the government's going to have to look at the way this is going to be supported.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. I mean, things currently with the level of demand that we are facing, slowly, I'm very sure the demand would change in future. If even in my road where I live, there is not really much of demand, because there are more of a elderly clients or elderly people living in and around these areas. Whichever area you see, if there are elderly people living in and around the area, fiber optic may be a very big investment for the government at this stage. But eventually, it is quite important to understand that as and when the properties are going to be rented in future, these things will become automatically, these things will become very, very important in general in terms of internet. Sorry, Joe, you were saying something.
Yeah, no, I'm just going to say that apart from the elderly situation, what you have to bear in mind that even the elderly, Paul, need other services now that are connected through the internet. For example, emergency call-outs and panic buttons and alarm systems, and also if you go, most people have now invested in these bells where they're on their phone and they can actually see if someone answered the door or put the post in the right place or whatever it is. The demand on the broadband is far greater than we ever imagined it would be, and it doesn't matter to a large extent where they are, and even where there are lesser remote people, there's going to be the amount of, so okay, as that Cam says, you're not going to get fiber optics everywhere, and that's not going to happen, because as I said earlier on, a lot of people own land in between, and to dig up and get the cabling done and so forth. So the government's already in discussion as to how that's going to be, and some of the stuff that can be coming through satellites. And our own phones, your O2s, your Vodafones, all these people they are probably now are in a good place to provide good connections, primarily because they've established themselves quite well. But going forward, even new developers, even new developments that are going to come to the market, there was a time when we used to sort of think, God, this has got Cat 5. This is brilliant. It's got a you can plug straight into the wall and this is the DBs, as they would say. It's not. it's now more. It's about saying, I want to actually draw my curtain sitting in New York, whenever that might be, not this year, but maybe next year. When they're sitting in New York, they want to draw their curtains because it's on their phone and the gadgets does it. It's all broadband. It's all heavy going. Bigger houses are having to have, more things working from home. I mean, some of the recent new homes that have been built, their lighting systems and facilities, turning the heating on. I'm going to have my underfloor heating turned off before I walk back in. All of those things are going to take connections with the broadbands. I'm just saying that going forward, it's a huge tick box that everybody's going to have to start to think about.
Gentlemen, thank you. Our guest this morning has been KAM KALRA, who's the letting specialist at ELLIS CO, which is based in Harrow. He's based in Harrow and in Stanmore office. Cam, how can we get in touch with you?
Through my contact number displayed, I believe. Is it displayed there on the system? I can't see that.
It
I
is
can't
now.
see the screen very well.
There you are.
Yes, 0208 863 3334. Calling me on this number, or through email, which is a generic email, harrow@ellisandco.co.uk. You are very welcome to get in touch if you have any questions, and I'll try my best to answer with the best possible ways.
Lovely. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And
Yes, right.
Okay, and Joe. There we are, Joe. There's details for Fairview and also Town and Country. So thank you also for your time. We have actually extended our time today quite significantly, as you've probably worked out, but we did lose our sound at the beginning for a little while. So I thought it was worthwhile continuing. And we did have quite a lot of people actually online following the conversation. So I thought we'd benefit from having the extra time, as it is a Sunday morning. And we've got nothing better to do with our time, gentlemen, have we?
Of course. Of course. And of course, good thing is next week we're going to have some mortgage chaps. I'm looking forward to that.
Indeed, yes. Yeah, we'll be talking finance next week. And next time you come on and join us, Cam, could you please find some glasses so we can make everything symmetrical?
Thank you. Will do.
And on that bombshell, as some famous presenter once said, we'll see you all next week at 10 o'clock for another Property Matters. Thanks for viewing.
Fantastic. Pleasure meeting you all. Bye.